Hey team, I'm excited to share this episode with you today. So, something you might not know about me is I actually started my career out as an aerospace engineer, more specifically as a guidance, navigation, and control engineer. So, basically, as a GNC engineer, I was developing the rocket's autopilot systems to ensure that the rocket would stay on its trajectory. I primarily worked on target systems, shout out to GQM and Zombie. So, what it means to be a target is we basically pretend to be bad guys and our customers try to shoot us down. Although I've left the defense industry, I sometimes still get added to cool group text messages about upcoming events. I'm not really sure what those are about. I met today's guest, rocket scientist extraordinaire Dustin Tyler, in 2019. All right, start the countdown. Episode launch in 3, 2, 1. All right, Dustin Tyler.
Hello, sir.
Thank you for coming on to today's show.
Thank you for having me.
Pretty cool having you on. It's been dude, we've known each other for,
I think it's like 2019.
2019, was that when you started?
That's when I started in GNC, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And then you came up and asked me the most awkward first question.
I have that written down.
Yeah.
What did I ask you?
You started with, do you have a girl? And then you paused and then said, hold on, do you have a partner? And I was like, okay, very, very woke, nice.
Bro, I was like, hey, I'm not here to judge. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's crazy. We only worked together for 1 year.
It was only a year.
Because I left in 2020. Wow.
That blows my mind a little bit.
That does blow my mind. Wait.
It feels longer.
2019.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you still go by Devin Taylor?
Every day. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I think something really cool about your name is that you have one of those like Dustin Tyler names, which is kind of like Brad Pitt. Like you have to say the first name and last name. And so it's like your name is like Dustin Tyler, aka Devin Taylor, aka Dustin Tyler, bro.
That's think crazy. That might just be a you thing because I don't think anybody in my life has ever mentioned that before.
That's so funny. And it's also sick because it's like, dude, you have two first names.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Every day, people who know me and have spoken to me on message and email in person always will interchange them, and they still interchange them.
They're like, hey, Tyler. And you're like, that's not my name.
Yeah.
It's Dustin Tyler.
I've let it go. Yeah. I don't care.
You're like, it is Mr. what it is. Tyler to you, actually.
Yeah. And there's been people where I'm walking down the hall and they say, hey, Tyler, and I just sort of ignore them. I'm like, they'll get it one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Because they don't know. They could be talking to an actual Tyler.
Oh, true. Yeah. And you're like, that's not my name.
And then I turn around and look like a fool.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess we do sometimes go by last names because people would call me Thatch. And I was like, oh, okay. Or maybe they actually.
I'm sure they didn't think that was your name.
But like refer to you kind of like in football, like.
They used to, but that's because we used to like tape our last names on our helmets.
Oh.
And so, you didn't have to really ask. You can just know.
Oh, okay.
And so your coach can immediately know who to get mad at.
Wait, do you still do jiu-jitsu?
No. That's something I like the idea of doing, and I would love to do it if I had more time, but it's also not that big of a priority. So I do it for a few months, and then I stop for a while, like a few months, and then I do it for 2 months, and I stop for 6 months.
Gotcha.
So I've kind of just put it on pause. If the kids get older and I have more time in the day, then sure.
It's like, I feel like just knowing your, that movement, it's like understanding relative like basics.
Yeah.
That seems so cool to me.
Yeah.
Dude, you're just leveraging body, like weight, right?
I'd say it's important for people to do it, I think, for a few months solidly, like go as many times as you can during a week and do it for a few months and then realize what you were before and what you were afterwards. It's not, you're just because you do it for a few months doesn't mean you're going to destroy everybody in life, but people who haven't trained, you're shocked when you first go in and you realize how easily someone who's a lot smaller than you could just do whatever they want.
Yes. My cousin is like 40 pounds lighter than me and he thrashes me. He he can easily like throw me around.
Yeah.
Yeah. He shows me how to roll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good terminology.
Bro,
look at you.
Nice. That's sick, right?
So you're doing it actively?
Oh, no. No. I want to.
Okay.
Yeah. I've learned I have like a weird commitment issue, and especially with things like that costs money. So like I don't have a gym
Yeah.
membership and things like that. I'll
Yeah.
do push-ups at home. Like if I knew how to do jujitsu at home, I
Do-jitsu.
do jujitsu. I was trying to say home jujitsu, but yeah. But I feel like a lot of gyms are like $150 a month or something. So I'm
Yeah.
like, that's a little bit steep
Yeah.
for me to commit to. But it's on my radar. It's
Yeah.
one of the top things that like, hey, if I ever have like extra cash, I'm gonna like actually do it.
Well, it's kind of like when you're in high school and you do an expensive sport and you have to travel, like especially those like traveling baseball teams.
It's
like,
real.
you need to commit a lot of money to it.
Yep.
And especially those types of gyms, they don't have people staying there forever. You know, everybody who comes in, like most people who come in probably come in for a bit and realize they don't really like it that much. And they like the idea of it more than they actually doing it, like sort of like I do. I enjoy doing it. It's just finding the time to do it is hard with 2 kids and a full-time job.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And being so busy, you have to pick like your time wisely.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Like we don't have infinite time in the day, unfortunately.
Yeah. My day is I get up, go to work, and then by the time I get home, I have like a couple of hours to see the kids, and
Yeah.
I can't justify and spend time with the wife too. So I
Right.
can't justify going there, immediately going to jujitsu for an hour and a half, and then coming home, and then it's like, well, good night, good to see you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I prioritized my hobby over spending time with you.
That's kind of how like doing my startup was like. It was just like, oh, all right, Elizabeth, I got to lock in for like it'd be like a lot, like
Yeah.
like 3 to 5 hours.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, I'll be sitting out there with her, but I have headphones in. I'm not like present, you know?
Yeah, because if you're gonna do it, you kind of have to, like you're saying, lean into it and do it.
Yeah, you have to try.
And then there's no point in, I mean, unless you want to take forever to do it, to finish it, or to get to the point where you want to get to. But I think you and I are similar, where if we have an idea to do something, we kind of go full send,
Yeah.
and we want to just get it done and start moving as fast as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any plans for Super Bowl?
No,
Oh, sick.
no, I don't. I mildly watch sports or follow sports. Like I will usually, I don't pay for any like subscriptions to watch any sports unless it's like on Netflix now and it's a free game or something, which is cool. But I'll throw it on the background.
Wait, is that a thing?
They have done it this last year at least on
Like Major League Eating, Joey Chestnut versus Kobayashi, hot dog eating?
what's happening.
Oh.
I'm talking about like NFL, like
Oh, okay.
as an example. Like,
Not Emily.
no,
Major
no.
League Eating.
No. They have been broadcasting like full games on like streaming services like Paramount Plus. They
For sure.
They had the Super Bowl on that last year,
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of been my way to. I'll watch it, so I'll put like I'll start a new account for the free
The
trial
7
for that
days.
day,
Yeah.
and then just get rid of it immediately after.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also don't really watch. So I think we're kind of just going over to Elizabeth's parents' house and just like, bro, I'm just going to grub and
Yeah.
hopefully go home early. Like, I'm like sick. I'm kind of tired now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who won? I don't care.
Yeah. But dude, that's sick. What is your title?
My title right now is a principal GNC engineer.
Bro, you're principal now?
Well, that's how I started,
Bro,
and like from when we first met. Because
you've been Oh, because they condensed it.
well, yes, yeah, yeah. They got rid of the senior title, so
Right.
it was basically like you're either going to be an engineer or the next one's a principal.
Okay, I see.
So there's no like gap between the two. But it was because my relevant years of experience added up at that point to then start that position as that, because HR at the time was like, no, if you have like 4 years of relevant experience, you have to be an engineer. But if you have 5 or above, and the company deems you worthy, I guess they'll put you at that title.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so GNC engineer. What does GNC stand for?
Guidance, navigation, and control.
Okay.
So just where are you going? How are you going to get there? Where are you right now?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Is that considered an aerospace engineer?
I don't really think any particular title of within the aerospace engineering realm is like an aerospace engineer. Maybe someone who's more aero focused, or maybe somebody who's like a actual legit systems engineer who knows the systems in and out and stuff like that, and who knows like the engineering of it. But I think aerospace engineer is more of like an umbrella term that I would never really call myself.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I work in aerospace. But my title is the GNC engineer.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. So you're in the aerospace industry, but you're a GNC engineer, which is kind of like a subset engineer under that umbrella.
And you can put that, I think for GNC specifically, you can probably put that in a lot of different areas.
Gotcha.
Mostly the controls portion of it, but navigation as well. Like, cars need to know navigation.
Oh, yeah, and controls for sure, yeah. You wouldn't necessarily call yourself an aerospace engineer. Would you call yourself a rocket scientist?
Fuck no.
That's so funny.
Can we curse?
Bro, yeah, for sure. It's so cringe. Like Elizabeth's mom got me this rocket scientist little like placard thing, and it's like, dude, I love it because I hate being called that.
No.
And so it's so funny to me.
Nope.
Cool.
I'm sure there are people who could probably call themselves that, but I mean, they have to work on the actual rocket itself and the, chemistry behind the propellant and stuff like that. That's like rocket science to me, like the research and development for that kind of stuff. But
propulsion stuff.
But if you're just some dickhead sitting on a simulation pushing enter a lot, then no, I don't.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh shit, lost my train of thought. I was gonna say,
isn't that a weird phrase? Lost your train of thought. Like trains are on tracks. Like it can only go like one direction.
Like how can you get off the train?
How do you lose it?
Get off the train tracks?
Yeah,
yeah.
It's weird. Anyways, there are people who will put it in their bios and of like social medias and stuff, and that's fine. But generally speaking, not all the time, but generally speaking, I've found that if you put it in your bio of some kind of profile, you're trying to like up yourself a little bit in regards to like your status of things, and usually it feels like people were usually using it to like compensate for a lack of knowledge or something. So they'll say like, oh, I'm a rocket scientist. Like, I don't think you probably ever hear any like neurosurgeon say, I'm a brain surgeon.
I'm a brain surgeon.
Yeah, they probably just say, I'm a surgeon who focuses on the brain.
How long have you been an aerospace engineer?
Since
GNC engineer?
GNC engineering since like late 2019, but I've been in the aerospace industry since 2014.
Did you have to go to school for this?
Yeah, you need at least a relevant degree. Like, I don't necessarily think you have to be in aerospace, because you can get an electrical or mechanical engineering degree and still go into aerospace. But I ended up going to getting an aerospace degree.
Okay, I see. Yeah. I think that's actually what I was trying to comment on. Was we were talking about how you don't have to, or like aerospace is like the umbrella term. But when I was working with you guys, we had a lot of coworkers who were mechanical engineers, so and EEs, and like really like maybe just aerospace engineers were doing like aerodynamics.
Yeah, I mean within the GNC group, there's the aero group, and they're the only ones who really touch aerodynamics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. But like GNC and then or I guess like specifically simulation, but then there was like the nav group as well and actuators and stuff. And
I'd say there's not really a controls specific group, mostly because a lot of the controls systems are pretty much set in stone. Like there's mild tweaks here and there. It depends on the program though. If you're doing more advanced program stuff or development stuff, then yeah, you're probably going to start working a little harder on a new control scheme.
Because it's kind of like new tech, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Or just the type of mission it's asking for. If you're going hypersonic, that kind of requires a little bit of a different approach.
I see. What does hypersonic mean?
Going faster than Mach 5.
Mach 5?
Yeah.
Bro, that's
just
fast.
5 times the speed of sound.
Okay. Wait, so you do GNC work for like what kind of vehicle? Like planes, rockets, missiles? Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Rockets. Any reason why you chose rockets, or?
The first job I had was as a systems engineer for large aircraft. One of them, I'm trying not to be so specific, but like a commercial aircraft. So large things like that for the flight control system. The first job was kind of how do I say this? It's really kind of verifying that the tests that the engineering team of the customer company set up their tests correctly. So we were kind of like an independent validation and verification team to make sure that their tests cover the requirements that they impose on themselves or that others have imposed on themselves, and that when they run the tests, it actually passes those tests and there's no issues with it.
Okay, I see. So that was like auditing almost.
It felt like, yeah. So I felt like I was wasting a lot of time doing that and losing a lot of my technical know-how from that. So, you go to school, you learn a ton of different subjects within the aerospace field, and generally speaking, people will fall into one of those subjects in those little niches. And so you kind of forget a lot of other stuff unless you need to know it for any kind of reason. So when I did that, I felt like I lost a lot of that technical know-how. So that's why I led into GNC. I wanted to do something more technical.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. And this is actually something I wanted to bring up, which is super interesting, is since I've left aerospace, I can't do math anymore.
Yep.
It's so surprising. Like my brain does not think in physics anymore.
Yep.
I remember general basics and stuff like that, and I'm sure I can get back to it. But you're right. It's like if you don't use it, it actually goes away.
Yeah. It's that adage of if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
Yeah.
Like it's math as a skill. So when they're young and say, "Oh, I just never understood it. I was never a math person." It's like, no. Some people get other things fast, and some people get it more slowly. But math is a skill you have to practice because it's like when you went to school. When you learn all the kind of tricks, that's all math is. It's just tricks and ways to manipulate an equation to make it easier to solve. That's pretty much all it is. And then when you forget all those little tips and tricks, suddenly those large equations become a lot more intimidating.
Bruh, that's pretty insightful because I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Do you do a lot of math at work?
Not really. Obviously it's math. There's math in the foundation of everything. But once it's set up and once it's been proven that it works, generally speaking, especially when you fly at established simulation, you're really manipulating the inputs that go into it and not so much the math of it. It depends, but sometimes it's never, I haven't had to integrate something at a triple integral or something like that in 10 years, but
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's usually pretty simple stuff if needed.
That's true. I remember doing math, but it was just trying to validate, or if you were trying to do some analyses or something and you needed to come up with the basic maybe structure of the analysis is remembering implement those equations. I don't even remember, dude. I remember trying to open up MATLAB and I'm like, I can't even.
Yeah.
Dude, that sounds hard.
Yeah.
I taught MATLAB for
I remember
for
that.
a year and a half.
That was the weirdest side quest that I expected from you.
Dude, yeah. It was I was like,
but it wasn't even MATLAB. It was you were teaching a CAD modeling program, and then MATLAB was
part of Engineering 101.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
How long did you do that for?
A year and a half. So 3 semesters maybe.
I thought I remember you saying you weren't huge about it even the first time. You kind of just kept doing it.
The students were pretty cool, but I think they were still a little bit young and they didn't quite have the wisdom of what's out there. And it was kind of just okay, just get through Engineering 101.
Yeah.
And so they.
Yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah. And to be fair, I was one of those students.
Yeah.
So I'm
I was too. I wasn't the best student overall. Yeah. So I didn't really necessarily know what I wanted to do when I first started college. I think I had an idea, and I think I liked the idea of aerospace. So I thought, oh, this will be a good idea. But I wasn't an aerospace fanatic as a child. So to your point, you go to aerospace or engineering 101. If you thought that if you really wanted to lean into it, you might understand all the little concepts that's going on. But when you're just a college student, just taking a class, you're like, sure. What is this class now?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. I was like, you got
to play Legos?
Going to Blackboard, and I was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
What did you think being an aerospace engineer was going to be compared to what it is now?
I think everybody thinks you're going to be a Kelly Johnson type and understand air and be able to see air and something like that. So, and then design your own SR-71s and blah, blah, blah. But you kind of realize quickly that, you're not going to design the plane by yourself. No one's ever going to do that ever. Unless you want to spend a lot of time on your own to do so. But even then you'd have to really go deep into the math and then validate and verify everything that you've done is correct. So for whatever reason, if you decided to design your own airplane from scratch, somehow, some way, all the electrical connections, you'd have to still try to sell it. And that's a lot of waste of time. But it's not it's bad. It's, you still get to do really cool things. It's better than a lot of other jobs. So if you're interested in aerospace, it's definitely a worthwhile thing to want to go to do, but don't go into it expecting that you're going to be the next big and bad engineer who's going to change everything. There's going to be a few of you, but more than likely you're going to be working on a very specific subset of a larger project.
I think that was one of the biggest gaps for me, and it took me quite a while. But it was basically until maybe when I quit or towards the end of my aerospace career, which was, you know what, the stuff that we are doing is actually pretty cool, but like from the global, from the bigger view, I guess. But what I'm not. Well, in the moment, I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm just coding this one line type thing." But if you really take that bigger view, it's really cool because you are working on like a cool system,
Yeah.
collectively,
Yeah.
yeah, and it all matters,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's got bigger effects than just your day to day.
yeah,
Now, the
exactly.
day to day may not be that exciting depending on what you're touching, but yeah, it goes into a larger product and larger, grander thing.
So does that mean like, are you usually working with other people then?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. Everybody, our GNC team, we have these every couple of weeks. We are trying to implement agile and stuff.
Oh, cool.
So as best we can,
Agile 2 week sprints.
as best
That's so funny.
it's
Bitbucket was that when I was leaving. We were trying to implement that.
yeah. That's that's the thing now.
That's cool.
The
There is value
it's
in it,
it's
unfortunately. Like I see it now.
there's value, but you really have to have somebody who's on the ball on like where your schedule and what things need to be done when, because you could easily spin off and go into, I want to try this science project, I want to try this, and spend 2 weeks doing that, and then realize, oh, this is either going to take way longer and way more time, or when I could have been doing something that I know what for a fact would have pushed us to the right schedule. But the more you go off of those tangents, the worse the schedule looks, and if not everybody on the team is on the same page, it's not going to work out. It falls apart too easily.
I think that was something that I always struggled with in terms of like innovation. It's like if you wanted to do innovative stuff, you had to do it on your own time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you have to keep the business going.
Yeah.
Right. Like and you can't introduce like more roadblocks into like the schedule.
Yeah.
So I get it.
If you have justification for the project and you think you can save time and you feel very strongly about it, that's great. But you also then have to provide the schedule and how much you think it's going to cost and how many heads you're going to need and how many levels of approval you're going to need to get that passed through. It's almost like the time you spent doing that might be wasting more time than just doing what has already been established, which is unfortunate because you want to be innovative and you want to do those things. But to your point, you're gonna have to do it in your own time most of the time.
We were talking about how like a rocket is a pretty big system with a lot of different components and different teams. Who else do you work with? Like can you give like an overall structure of like how to build a rocket?
We work with systems engineers who are the kind of high level, know every little component about the rocket, and they should be coordinating all the engineering teams and making sure that the project is ultimately doing what it needs to be doing, and then translating any technical information between the GNC EEs, the technical engineering, to the program management, so then they can relay that to customers and so on and so forth. We in GNC mostly work with like the propulsion, mechanical, somewhat the electrical engineering, but that's usually like during tests. But anybody who has an input to a simulation, that's what we mostly care about.
Okay, I see.
And we try to make sure that their model works, but B, does the output make sense? Yeah. So GNC kind of works with everybody because we have to know we have to have every component as many components as possible that we can try to make this thing a reality in the simulation as close as possible, because we're going to use the output of that simulation as like our objective evidence that we're confident that we can do this actual mission.
Yeah, makes sense. You have a set of mission requirements and the simulation proves, hey, we can do this.
Yeah. It at least says like we feel confident that we can.
Oh, we feel confident. Right? Yeah.
Through these Monte Carlo testings and this many X amount of Monte Carlo runs and all these types of everything's getting perturbated in one way or another. We feel confident that the vast majority of these things show that we can probably do this.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I have always been proud to say like GNC feels like the brains, and bruh, GNC is the brains of the rocket.
GNC and software are the brains of the rocket. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
With the brains, like what What do you do like for GNC? Like you said simulation work, but like what does that mean?
So we have a 6 degree of freedom simulation
Mm.
that takes in all the components or all the models from other people, like the propulsion and mechanical and stuff like that. There's a framework in which the simulation will run, and then you develop your flight software within that framework to then kind of copy paste into the actual flight computer itself. So
Makes
that's
sense.
that's kind of the convenience of the simulation we work on is as we're developing the flight software, GNCN software is, as we're developing that flight software, it can be developed in a way that we don't have to change anything as we go into or put it into the actual flight computer.
Mm-hmm.
So the simulation is just acting as a framework in which you can develop that flight software within. And then the models that get put into it come from other teams like propulsion mechanical,
Okay.
other, the navigation group and other stuff like that. And then we develop our own models like autopilot and stuff like that.
Whoa, autopilot. So you also developed the autopilot system?
The GNC team does, yes.
Mm.
Most of the autopilot systems have already been sort of developed, and a lot of times we're just kind of tweaking it to make it work for the things that we do. But yeah.
Okay,
But,
like
yeah.
for like each specific mission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the simulation is literally simulating the entirety of the mission and the rocket itself, like all of the loads, any kind of disturbances, any ordnance events, anything that we're expecting to occur. We're trying to simulate it in this thing so that we can, if any issues arise during the simulation test, then we can catch it early.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. That was another gap for me, was like when I was developing, again, I was like, oh, dude, I'm just building this one line. But another thing was like, it didn't, like, I knew we were building a simulation, but I didn't really get what that meant until like, it took until probably when I quit to be like, oh, we're building the rocket's like journey right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty tough.
The simulation is very convoluted and it's been worked on for decades at this point.
Yeah.
So, and by coding, if you don't put comments that are very explicit as to why you added a certain line, even then it still doesn't fully make sense because that could have been done 15 years ago.
Yep.
And you did this little trick this way because you don't know the problems that they had to go through to then add those extra lines to jump those hurdles. So to you, at coming in 15 years later or whatever, it looks like they just, oh, this is just what people normally do.
Yep.
When in reality, it's like, no, they didn't think about doing that right away. It's because they ran into issues.
Mm-hmm.
So after so much time goes by, and then you start a new job and say, hey, here's the simulation, try to learn it as best you can. It's like, I'm overwhelmed right now.
Mm.
That's at least how I felt, or I still kind of feel.
It's funny you talk about comments because that's a controversial topic. Should you have comments or should your code be legible enough to not need comments? And it's like,
I don't think anyone's code could ever possibly be legible enough.
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, somebody just needs to tell me in plain English right now. That's so funny.
There's someone who we used to work with who would write several 100-page papers.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Are you remote at all?
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Okay.
Well, I was remote for 5 seconds because we had a mission that allowed me to do so, but the mission that we work on, I have to be in the building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're like in office 5 days a week?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's what I'm used to. So it's, working from home is cool, but it's also very distracting. Especially when you first...
All right, we can be off this topic. No, I'm just kidding.
when you first start it, you feel like you're almost playing hooky. I think when you go from working in office all the time and then going to working from home, at least for me, it takes time for me to realize, oh, I think I really need to set up like an actual office and not distract myself. And I can't listen or have TV on in the background and I can't do this. Like I need to treat it like I'm actually in the office still because I get too easily distracted by stuff. And then when, you have the ability to kind of get up and stretch around and like go outside for a moment. And then you realize, oh, I have to really sit here and like put headphones on and sort of lock in. Yeah. So it's like at that point, what's really the point of being at home?
Yeah, that's true. You do have to find your workflow, but maybe it's like for me it was like, oh, I prefer finding my workflow at home than like in the office. But I get it.
I get the benefits. Like, yeah, you can get up later because you don't have to get up, get ready, drive to a place. Like you spend less money on gas. Some people, justify to not even having a second car at that point.
Yeah.
So you can save a lot of money. But
bro, my gas has like actually gone up now that I'm going back into the office.
Oh,
and
really?
It's like it's noticeable.
You live kind of far.
Bruh, I live far, and I live like an hour away.
From your office?
That's what I say.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So,
crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Not remote work. Is that like your company specifically, or do you know if like do you know any other people who do remote work for aerospace, or is it like all in person?
Depends on what you're working on. If it's especially something that's more defense related, you're more than likely working in the building.
Okay.
Unless you strike some deal where you don't need to.
Yeah.
We know people who work in different states who have
Right.
worked remotely for a long time, but at some point in time, they needed to get their, clearance again and have to go back inside. But yeah,
Makes sense. Do you anything outside of like simulation work for your role? Like, what are your responsibilities?
our general responsibility is we develop the flight software and guidance algorithms that go into the flight computer. And then secondarily to that comes with kind of being the simulation owners and managers. So
Okay.
we have to not only make sure that the flight software works and does what we want it to do, but does the simulation of the mission match what we're expecting it to be. And not only that, does the inputs that we're getting, are the inputs that we're getting correct? Is everything within the simulation correct for the mission? So we're not tuning, our autopilot and guidance stuff to be towards a mission that doesn't make any sense.
Gotcha.
Or towards what we're actually trying to do. We don't want to spend time tuning or fine tuning things that end up being wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
So once you're done fine tuning, so what's the next step?
You run it on the actual flight computer itself. You put the flight computer in the actual control loop.
Okay.
And so the simulation runs on the side, and then you pass all your inputs into that flight computer, and then
you like inject it.
Yep, and the flight computer will calculate as it's supposed to do what commands you're supposed to or actually give out.
Okay.
And
so
then, yeah.
So this is like all like desk job. Like you
Yeah,
you don't
yes,
like you don't do anything else.
We could be doing testing. I mean, once the flight software is actually completed and we're confident that it's what it's supposed to be and everything's released on our configuration management stuff, then we'll go into more formal testing where we'll actually take the hardware in the more of the hardware in the loop, and we'll again throw in our inputs into that from our simulation, and then make sure that the hardware actually does what it's supposed to do. So if we take your IMU and turn it, or your fins or whatever going to react the way you expect it to do, and so on.
Okay, so you actually get to see and touch the rocket.
Yes.
Oh wait.
Now,
that's so
generally,
sick.
we always let our tech people do the touching and stuff because they're the ones who actually put it together.
Right.
But
that is a part.
We
of
help
your
set
role.
up the test to say like, hey, if we're going to run this test, we need you to, if here's your IMU, let's turn it this way. Let's turn it this way. How fast? How much? Yeah.
Okay, I see. Do you travel for work much, or is it all like?
It depends on the program, because the more established programs who launch smaller things or have launches scheduled every year or 2 years or something, like you'll probably travel out a couple times a year for those kinds of things. Depends on how many people, because you can't be the only person who knows how to sit in front of a launch. I can't think of the word.
Control room?
Yeah, kind of a control room. I can't think of the word right now, but
Same.
ops room or something like that, where you can't be the only person who knows how to do all that stuff. At some point, you're gonna have to train somebody else to do it, and then that person's gonna have to train somebody else to do it. So you want everyone on your team to be available in case everybody gets hit by a bus. You need somebody to fill in.
That's crazy. If everybody gets hit by a bus, does that stop? Or are they like, nah, dude, we gotta go. We're on a schedule.
If enough people get hit by a bus, yes, that will stop. That will stop everything.
Slightly delay it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
If
But
the train derails, or what is that?
Yeah. If we lost our train
Yeah.
of people.
Literally.
But obviously, if enough people can't do it, and you have people available, but they've never done it before, they're not going to trust you to do that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they're not going to. It's worth halting to get somebody who knows what they're doing versus having somebody who has no idea what they're doing. Because especially in the countdown moments of like you're about to fire this thing, you don't want people who are going to panic and make a wrong call.
True.
Yeah.
Wait, so have you actually launched a rocket?
Yes.
Oh, wait, that's so sick.
I've done it a few times.
A few?
Yeah.
How many? Like ballpark?
I've probably like 4 or 5. I think at this point.
4 or 5 of
Yeah.
them. Nice.
And one of them was, I got really lucky because we flew out of Kauai.
Oh, sick.
So,
Wait, when was that?
This was
A few years ago?
like a couple of years ago, or I think at this point, yeah. They're what we call GNC 1 and 2, like their lead chair, if you will. That person left the company, and then emailed a handful of people who he knew had experience and was like, hey, kind of first person who wants to respond to this, if you want to go fly out in this area, in Kauai, I'm like hitting send, like, yes, I want to do that.
I'm going.
Yeah. So I was just the backup chair.
Mhm.
And the other person, he kind of knew what he was doing, but he had never done it before. So they just said like, they just need somebody to be there.
GNC 1?
I was the backup chair to this totally other program. I've never worked on it, never did anything with it. So I got lucky. I basically got like a free trip to kind of sit in the background and not really do anything.
And just be in the moment.
And just be there but be prepared enough, obviously, like if this person didn't end up or wasn't able to do it, then I can fill in. Or if he had a moment of panic, then I could fill in. But it was really just like, I'll give any tips and tricks that I'm aware of. But
or if he got hit by a bus or something.
Exactly.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Because it's, these things are expensive and there's a lot of people involved and a lot of groups involved that don't see each other every day. So when they all come together into one place, like nobody really wants the operations to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It is very expensive having everybody, not everybody, but like a big portion of the team there to launch. Yeah. So it's like, hey, like we're on a schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, those 2 a.m. wake ups, 3 a.m. That's tough. Yeah.
The schedule made no sense because someone tried to justify it
5 hours early.
Yeah.
Something.
Someone tried to justify it saying like, oh, your practice day, you'll get up at midnight.
Fuck.
And then the next day you get up at your normal schedule because it's just a break day. And they're like, oh, you'll catch up on sleep then or something. I'm like, that makes it worse. Like, I'd rather be on the same schedule every day and then go back to my normal schedule after the fact. But me waking up at midnight and then waking up at a normal time and then waking up at midnight again, I'm like, I slept for 2 seconds. Like,
literally.
And
Dude, you can't go to sleep at 2 p.m.
Yeah. And I have to sit in front of a computer for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Where, especially for GNC, like we don't have a lot to do on those and the countdowns because most of our stuff is right in the beginning and then immediately right afterwards. But actually counting down and getting to that point, like unless something goes wrong, generally it's just, numbers are green.
Yep.
Go team.
What do you say in the ops room? All right, simulate it. We're in the moment right now. Rocket is out there. You're GNC 1. I'm GNC 2. All right, what? Run me through some fast.
Has this already launched? Is that
no, not yet?
Okay.
We woke up. We've been sitting there for a few hours, and it's go time. What is that? Batteries have been scrubbed.
Yes,
batteries have been scrubbed.
Yeah, depending on the types of battery. Yeah, because once they've been scrubbed, there's kind of a no going back.
Okay.
I mean, you can still stop it and not launch anything, but once you've scrubbed the certain kinds of batteries, then you're not going. Some of the hardware in that situation, you have to stop the thing, replace them, so that takes a day or so, and you can. If you have a backup day, you can relaunch it. But it depends on. But to answer your question, it depends on what is in the countdown and what's you're specifically looking for. A lot of times, it's just does our nav solution make sense and showing values that we care about. And then if we have any fins or any TVCs or if we want to purposely wiggle it or simulate it, does it wiggle in the way that we expected it to, and that there's no polarity issues in the actuators.
I see.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. I mean, sometimes like for the program we worked on, we needed to make sure that like the winds that were coming in, we input the winds that are coming from the balloons that get sent out. And then they go out every couple of hours and we just make sure that the winds aren't going to be too strenuous. Or too much
for the system.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the entire rocket, like if the winds are high, we don't want the loads or expected loads to be too high, obviously.
Yeah. So, and that's where the simulation can come in too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So we'll have the simulation kind of running, and then we'll just run a nominal case, so nothing's perturbated. But we have already established like our load lines of like it can't be higher or lower than these values. We'll put in the actual winds day of. And we'll do that multiple times and just make sure that like we don't expect anything to go haywire. Nice. Yeah.
Can you give me like the green flag? What would you say to indicate that you're good to go?
There's a few points in the countdown generally where they'll ask each individual group, like software, mission manager, launch director, like they'll just call your group and you just say go.
GNC go, bro?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Nice.
GNC go.
That's so sick.
Or just go, because they'll say GNC and then you just respond with go.
Go.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's pretty anticlimactic. until you actually launch the thing and you hear it go off, then that's pretty cool.
Dude, it's loud.
Yeah, it's loud as crap.
Yep. I've done, I think maybe 3 launches,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. Yeah. I don't really remember, but
That was, yeah, that's right.
it was 2019.
You went to the White Sands one.
Yep. I was out at White Sands a lot, and then
Yeah.
Point Magoo one time.
Okay.
Yep. So that was pretty cool. Exhausting. Yeah, it was like I said, 2 a.m. wake up calls. I couldn't sleep, so I like went for a run.
Yeah.
I was like, there's nothing to do. Yeah.
It's better. I think for GNC, it's probably the best gig because you don't have to be out there for the, as an example, like for 6 weeks. Like you have to really be there for maybe a couple, because of the first week it's do our final test. Like you put this, if it's on a rail or on a launch stand, like you do your kind of final checks to make sure everything's still lined up correctly, that nothing got clocked incorrectly and we're miswired. And then the next week it's your practice, and if you do any red cards or anything like that.
Yeah. Have you ever like experienced anything that didn't go well?
Yeah.
Bruh, how did that go?
It's wildly depressing because any one small thing could go wrong and it can just lead to a catastrophic failure. And a lot of times that's how we learn where there could be mistakes, is something has to go wrong for you to realize, oh, that needs to be fixed. Yeah, there was one where we, normal countdown, launch the thing, and then I hear somebody say, there it goes. And then 5 seconds, or not even 5 seconds later, like a second later, someone's like, nope.
Bruh.
Because they saw it go. And then the issue that happened in a high level term is that all the ordnance events went off all at once.
Bro, really?
So you hear this pop of the normal motor, and then you hear this like pop, 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 and you're like, oh no.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll show you. I think I might have a video of somebody, because somebody we used to work with knew that that launch was happening that day. So they traveled up to that area and then wanted to film, like kind of pointing in that general direction from a few miles away. And then you just see this thing go.
Oh no.
Just start to do its dance.
I think in 2019, I experienced my first failure, and that was very depressing.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, kind of like crying.
Everyone gets on edge.
Yeah. Oh, bruh. Yeah. So like, I think all of the techs and stuff, because they're out there for like 8+ weeks, right? Building it at least 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it's like, program management has to like lock in now. Yeah. They're like, dude, now we have to like resolve this and start the write-ups right now. So it's like the dichotomy of emotions. Like they're sad, but they're like, dude, we got to move forward right now.
They have the hardest. They're in the hardest position in that scenario, because they have to make sure customers don't get too pissed and make sure that our teams are focused on trying to find the issue.
Yep.
So they're trying to balance everybody.
During that time, I think that day I worked 36 hours. It was like, yep. So it wasn't my launch. It wasn't like, I wasn't even really associated with it. I was just on the team, and we were like out in New Mexico. But then, so went up to visit, didn't go well. Then drove home, and I immediately started doing analyses.
Yeah.
So that was like,
Gotcha.
That was literally a 36-hour day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. Yeah. Because then you get in your head, you're like, I know kind of generally what went wrong. How could it have possibly been? It's not a bad thing necessarily, but it is, your first thought is, what did I do wrong?
Bro, that's real.
Yeah.
Yep. Like, was it me?
Yeah. And thankfully I was with somebody who has a lot of experience as well. Like I was the lead chair, but this person had never launched for this program before. So he was there. He knew what to do. He was totally experienced, but he had never done it before. So they wanted somebody to kind of show him our general process.
Okay, I see.
So thankfully, because he has so much experience, when he's experienced these kinds of things before, and his first thought was like, okay, stay calm.
Yep.
Let's see if there's anything that we are aware of that could have possibly gone wrong. Let's go through the sequence of events. Let's make sure there's no pitfalls or anything like that.
Review telemetry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of whatever we have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Dude,
it's so sad. I think in that moment, I was like, dude, I can't do this.
It's not a fun time, because then you also think, is this going to end this program?
I didn't even think of that.
Are they going to let us do this again? At this particular program, I think we were confident enough that they were going to let us keep going, because we're not a very expensive target. But
okay, I see. Interesting. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks a lot.
Yeah. But when it works, it's great.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah.
It's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got to tell your director, like, look at this Monte Carlo band in the simulation. Look how dead center it is.
It's nominal.
Yeah.
Yep. Just fly nominal.
Yeah. Right down the pipe.
Yep. Follow the blue.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been a aerospace engineer, GNC engineer for 5 years ish, six now, 2019.
Yeah.
2025.
In 6 years. And well, I think, 6 years in September.
Okay, cool. Can you kind of like describe what the career growth opportunities there are for an aerospace engineer, like where you're at or like your experience with that? And how much can like an aerospace make?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It depends on what the individual. I mean, that's the thing with any of this stuff. It just depends. If you want to become a manager and then kind of climb that ladder, then yeah, you're going to make more money probably more quickly. But the further up you get, the further away you're getting from being an aerospace engineer. Like you can call yourself that, that's fine, but you're not going to do any technical work. Like you're not going to work on the simulation. You're really just going to be, at some point you can become a lead, and then you're just trying to translate what your management is telling you and try to lead your team to solve the problem as best you can within the budget and scope of the mission. But again, the further up you go, the less technical work you're doing. And because I did systems for my first few years in aerospace, I wanted to do more technical work. So for me personally, I want to kind of stick in the more technical realm. I've always told myself that if I ever want to affect a project at a higher level, then I will try to aim for those higher level positions. But I enjoy the engineering part of it, and that's what I went to school for. So if I want to keep doing that, then I know I have to kind of stay at the level that I'm at. Now you can grow technical ranks, stuff like that. Like you can become, a staff level or a fellow at some point that you can make a lot more money doing so. I think the band right now, I think like at a minimum, I don't remember the associate level salaries. I think like 80s, something like that might be the starter, 70s, 80s. And then the top is like 2 something maybe.
Okay.
Something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
When I started, I was making like 68K, and then I think I negotiated and maybe got 70 or something like that.
Sure.
And then worked for a few years, and I think I left at like 80, 85. But what is that? Like after 4 years, three or 4 years. So that was 2020, I think. Yeah.
Were you an associate when you first started?
I guess I had my master's. So
So you started as an engineer.
as level 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I never got to level 3, which is
And you were there for 4 years?
yeah, kind of. It was like I was an intern in 2016. But
Okay.
I'm counting it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because they really set it up to make it think like once you cross that threshold of years of relevant experience, you're going to get promoted no matter what. But I mean, there are people who have been there as long as I have, and unfortunately, like they're in like, somewhat of a mission lead position too, or have just, I don't really know how to explain it. Like you really have to put yourself out there and really push for yourself to get those kinds of promotions and make it known to them. Like I'm expecting this. And then but you also have to put in the work and ask them ahead of time, like, what do I need to be doing? What is expected of me to do this? And of course there's no guarantees because budget is what it is, and it really depends on what you're working on. The project may not be as big of a deal as other ones are. And so as much work as you may be putting into your stuff, you may not be making as big of a splash as these other people who have more people who could be working maybe a normal schedule, but because they're working on a more expensive program or a more notice program, your efforts may have to be kind of pushed a little further than the normal person to kind of get that attention. But yeah, there are people who've been working longer than I have, or at least at the same amount of time, and still have been stuck in the same position or same title for a while. It might just be that maybe they're not as good. I don't know. Or maybe they just
don't advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
I see. Do you get bonuses and or like, I think the word is called RSUs, which is stock options. Do you is that a thing in aerospace?
Yeah, I'm sure every company does it differently.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Because, in tech, that's like the thing. It's like you have your base pay, and then eventually maybe you'll get shares of the company. And that's kind of like the, what is that, like financial like motivation, I guess?
Yeah.
I can see like, okay, you go up to being a director, and then But how do you motivate yourself to try hard if you walk into this thing and you're like, I'm going to never grow financially?
Yeah, and plus, if you're given more options for shares, the better the company does, the more that's going to be worth. So that's kind of a big driver of, well, I got to make sure that the company is doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And the higher up you go, the more influence you have of the company overall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. With your degree and your experience, what other like opportunities are there for you? Like, is GNC a big thing across the entire aerospace industry? Is it just where you work? If you were to like leave your company right now, are there like other opportunities for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Every aircraft will need a GNC type person. Not necessarily, maybe they work the simulation too. I don't know how other companies have separate sim people who just take in inputs from the GNC person or a guidance or a control person or whatever. But yeah, GNC can be spread to not even just aerospace. It can go to many other industries as well that require like the navigation or controls portion of it.
Gotcha.
Guidance is a little different, but controls is pretty ambiguous.
Makes sense because like we were saying, like if a vehicle has to drive itself, what is that? Autonomous vehicle? It's like, you're going to have like a control system in there. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I see. Do you have any advice or any words for somebody who's interested in going into aerospace?
Yeah, just make sure you actually enjoy aerospace stuff. Like if you have a passion for it, or if you have just a general interest in like the history, or if you just enjoy the idea of it in general, it's a lot easier to work in that kind of a field, especially because most of the jobs are in defense. So there's a very tight schedule around a lot of the projects, and like there is for everything else. But if you don't enjoy working with other people and don't enjoy the idea of, or if you're not that excited about aerospace stuff specifically, it's probably not going to be that fun for you. It's a lot easier to enjoy your job when you actually enjoy the idea of it in general. And there's been a few people who, when I have interviewed, they specifically said they look for people who seem to actually care about what they're going to work on. It's not just a job to them. It's something that excites them. So that's what I would say is, if you don't enjoy it or the idea of it, it's not really worth your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go do things that make you happy. Happiness is sought out. It's not bought.
Oh, perfect closer.
Yeah.
Happiness is sought out, not bought.
Yeah.
Wait, that's so sick.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. DT, Dustin Tyler, Devin Taylor, first name, first, last name.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on today,
Of course.
bro.
Thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. And that concludes today's launch. Thank you again, Devin, Dustin, Tyler, Taylor, for taking time out of your day and letting us know a little bit more about what it's like being an aerospace engineer. And if you have any additional questions about what it's like being an aerospace engineer, leave them in the comments below.